Of the planning board. I'd like to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded and may be broadcasted or rebroadcasted on the WestfordCAT. As we always do, we'll start this with open forum. Mr. Jenowitz, do you have anything for open forum?
Just in 2 weeks from tonight, October 21st at 7 p.m., we'll have a special town meeting. I can't believe it's already here. Check-in will start at 5:30 p.m. It's over at Westford Academy. If it doesn't get completed that evening, the next meeting date for town meetings to get continued to would be October 28th, so exactly 1 week later, at the same time and same location at Westford Academy.
Great. I would add on to that the town manager sent out a survey looking for attendance, so we can be prepared to who's coming or who's not coming. So if you haven't seen that survey, I think look for it on the website just to make sure that we're prepared for attendance. Anyone else on the board have anything?
Nope. No.
All right. Seeing none, our first public hearing, PB 2425, 50 Main Street, J.B. Fletcher Library. Can I get a motion to waive the reading of the notice?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Before we open the public meeting, there's a request to waive the fees on this. Joe, what would the fee be normally on this?
Normally, site plan review, you're looking at $3,000. However, it is a town project, so it would be kind of silly, I guess, for the town to be paying the town. And how would you make that work? So,
Move that we waive the application fee on PB 2425. Second.
Motion second, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There you go.
Good evening, I'm Ellen Rainville, the library director, and we're here to make a presentation on the renovation and addition project for the library, funded in part by a grant from the Board of Library Commissioners. And I'd like to introduce the government officials who are here from the Permanent Town Building Committee, Nancy Cook and Chris Karpinski, and representing the Library Board of Trustees, Buffy Dierks. We also have our OPM, Alicia Monks from CHA Consulting, and Leah Wolkovich-Cordy is representing Feingold Alexander Architects, and will introduce the team that's making the presentation tonight.
Great.
Thank you, everyone. So introducing the design team that is here this evening, we have, and thank you for the introduction slide, Dr. Prasad and Adrian Emmerlich from Verdant Landscape Design, and we have Jonas Procton and Janet Bernardo from Horsley Witten, our civil engineers. And I think Ellen already got the rest of our team, so that is us. Thank you very much for listening to our presentation this evening. So we're going to start with a brief project overview for the architecture portion. As most of you probably know, this is our wonderful existing library building. We are all very excited to be working on this project because this really is a gem of Westford, and we are going to maintain particularly the 1890s portion of the building, which is in the center here, and then the 1980s wings as well. So this portion of the facade is going to stay more or less the way that we see it today. There are some beautiful enhancements that our landscape architects will get into, as well as our civil engineers, but architecturally this is more or less what you're still going to see on Main Street. But we are very excited about some of the enhancements that we're going to bring to the building on the interior and on the back as well. If you want to go to the back. So this is roughly what the project's going to look like. That front facade that we just looked at is nestled nicely into what we're going to add on to primarily in the back of the building. So the wing structures will continue to the back, and then there will be a more modern addition in the back that is continuing of brick, but also some more modern materials such as metal panel and glass, really embracing all the light that we can get on the north face of the building. Slide. It's just another view. This is from the rear, so what you would see from the parking lot side. As you can see, we're respecting the height of the existing building, not going any higher than what is there, and stepping back as you go from the first to the second to the third floor. So it's really trying to maintain that scale for a person at street level. So building plans and exterior elevations, there are 3 levels, which is how many levels there were historically. I know in the 1980s edition, there were some additional mezzanines and things introduced. We've really simplified that and gone back to the original 3 levels. The primary entrance will be from the rear in the parking lot. That is where most of the patrons are coming through today. That is a completely accessible entrance from the parking lot. There's an accessible path bringing you from Main Street to the back of the parking lot, and there is an accessible path from dedicated ADA spaces in the parking lot up to that entry, which again, the other design team members will get into that parking lot design a little bit more. There's, in the center of this plan is an elevator that will help you access all 3 floors. This is primarily the children's level on the left, the main meeting space on the right, and then a lot of back of house spaces that are Page South, which is nestled into that historic portion of the building, mechanical, and a lot of the services of the library are tucked there. On the 2nd floor, Joe, is our historic entrance on Page South, which is the south side of the building. Thank you. Oh, I have a pointer. And this is where we are maintaining our historic portions of the building on the inside as well. These browsing rooms are going to remain essentially how they are today. We are maintaining the wainscoting on the walls. There's a beautiful fireplace and a grandfather clock here that are going to stay. There's a coffered ceiling in the center. All of that's going to remain and connect you into the more modern 2nd level of the building, which is really, this is an open area for studying, working, just enjoying some of the views and all of this glass that's here. There's also now a dedicated teen room, which is something I know that the community has been looking for, because the teen and youth populations in Westford are growing and using this library a lot. So we want to give them those resources, which also include some dedicated silent study and individual study rooms on this floor. And then lastly, on the 3rd floor is mostly administrative spaces, but another historic element that we are absolutely maintaining is this Mary Atwood room that a lot of you know and have had meetings in. That room is going to stay essentially the way that it is, because it really is history in and of itself. So not only does it have the volumes of Westford and different historic artifacts, it has historic furniture, and it itself is just this relic of the town and the library, which we of course want to respect and celebrate. Outside of that room are more staff amenities, this nice break room, another conference room, a trustee's room, and then directors' offices and staff offices on that floor. So, and then I think we do have some elevations here. It's a little hard to see, but on the bottom is our historic elevation on the south of the building. We just talked about not a whole lot of changes. It's pretty much what we see today. The north elevation is really the brand new elevation, because that existing portion from the 1960s edition is completely going away. Portions of the 1980s buildings are going to be taken off, and then this is what you will see from the parking lot. And then very quickly, the east and west elevations are continuations of the wings from the 1980s, respecting what was there, but also trying to connect to that much more modern north facade that we are introducing. It's more exciting in the landscape, which we will get into as my colleagues from Britain take over.
Thank you. I'm Katya Posadlo, principal at Verdant Landscape Architecture. So I have about 10 landscape slides that I'll go through, and then I'll pass it off to Jonas to talk about the civil engineering. So this first slide shows the overall landscape plan. Main Street is on the right-hand side of the slide here. The proposed library footprint is shown in blue, enlarged on its left-hand side there. New driveway and sidewalk from the Main Street side leading into the new parking area at the back. It's also shown. The left-hand side of the slide is generally north-facing, if you will. You may notice that, I'm not sure if you can see it from here, but there's some resource area setbacks shown in the upper left-hand corner of the slide toward the left end of the parking area. That's due to the adjacent wetlands off-site. And we're proposing a lot of native plantings throughout the project as a result of our adjacency to that resource area. Around the perimeter toward our residential abutters, we're
Can you speak up? I'm sorry, they're having trouble hearing you in the back.
Sure thing. Around the perimeter toward our residential abutters, we're focused on providing ample vegetated buffers. You can see along the top of the page there, rows of new evergreen trees, and then along the bottom left portion of the slide here, more evergreen tree plantings for buffers. But I'll back up just a second here and say that our main goals for the landscape are twofold: to create a very welcoming entry and usable outdoor areas in support of the new expanded library, and also to develop a sustainable and low-maintenance landscape that enhances biodiversity and sustainable practices. So at the main entry to the library, which is at the rear of the building, it's going to remain there. And along the left-hand side or the bottom of the page there, you can see that we've developed a theme of curves and semicircles to develop the shapes of the patios and the plant beds and the drop-off area at that side of the building. Not only do these sweeping gestures unify the pedestrian areas and the new patio spaces, but they also help guide and smooth and legible walkways to the front door, because they're curved, like, leading right to the front door. And they also, lastly, provide for some comfortable, in their smaller shapes, you'll see on later slides, some comfortable, kind of cozier rooms, because they're these little semicircular patio areas for gathering. So in this next slide, if you will, we're going to zoom in and take a look at the drop-off and the entry area in some more detail. The parking area that's further to the left that you can't see in its entirety here is going to be a one-way system, indicated partially here by those white arrows that you see at the drop-off. So it's going to create a more, a safer condition for cars dropping people off, as well as for the book drop, which is indicated by those two little gray boxes to the left-hand side of that bigger curve on the left. There's going to be a row of trees and some bollards preventing, along the edge of that curved drop-off to prevent cars from driving into the pedestrian area closer to the building. And the primary elements of the entry here, however, are two large curved beds that will frame the base of the new architecture. And the aesthetic that we've developed is somewhat like the image in the bottom right, where we're utilizing some river stone and boulders within the plant beds. And also out front is a larger flexible patio area, sort of like the image in the top there, that can accommodate flexible uses, group events, lunchtime outside, that kind of thing, with furnishings that can move around as well as fixed furnishings. Go to the next slide, please. Here you can see some of those specific furnishings that are being proposed, including various unit paving to decorate and create a hierarchy of paving materials. The fixed benches, a couple of trash cans, bike racks. Next slide, please. Now we're going to look at that side patio that's to the left of the front. If you're facing the front from Main Street, this is the left-hand side of the building. The level of this patio is a little bit lower than the existing grass area that's there now against the building. So to create a flush exit out of the building into this patio space, we have to lower that grass area. So we've developed some small curved retaining walls along the edge of the patios to basically do the retaining of that slope. The character of the space is fairly narrow, sort of like the image in the bottom of the page, but it's curvy. So the forms of the walls and the paving pattern will also be curvy. The walls will likely be cast in place concrete with wood seating installed on top, but we're keeping it open. If there's enough granite block material that's available from the demolished portion of the library building, then maybe we can use granite blocks to form the edge and do the retaining of this edge. One of the main features that we're preserving along this space in this design is the grand old oak tree stump that you could see in the picture there. We're shaping the patio around that to preserve it, and in the future there will be some other additions and designs that Ellen and her team will enact upon it in some form. Next slide, please. Now we're going to zoom into the front of the building on Main Street. While the facade of the historic building is remaining, we found actually that the existing front walkway is not up to code. It exceeds an acceptable slope. So we're needing to replace it, add a couple of steps within that front walkway. And as part of that, we'll be resetting the mailbox on some new paving as well. We also have a new egress door coming out of the, sort of to the left of the front door from the basement portion of the building. Some stairs come up and out as a secondary egress, and we're connecting that via a walkway over to the landing in front of the historic front steps. There's a memorial bench out front that will be preserved, but will be made more accessible by adding some pavement underneath it and resetting it. The 2 crabapple trees and the dogwood tree out front, as well as the simple lawn that's out front, will remain. And we are proposing to replace the existing shrubs that are along the front facade of the architecture with a slightly more diverse palette of native shrubs. Next slide. So this is our lighting plan with each of the site light fixtures highlighted in yellow. We sent this out to a lighting rep and worked with them to verify dark sky compliance and adequate foot candles for safety. And of course to ensure that there's no spillage over the property lines. Next slide, please. We understand that lighting is an important consideration for the library because it stays open till 9 p.m. many nights. The style of post lights in the vehicular areas are like the image in the the top images, I should say. And the pedestrian areas will be illuminated by a path bollard like the one you see in the bottom right. And at the flagpole, we're proposing to utilize a couple of spotlights like the one on the left. There's an exemption for dark sky compliance for American flagpole lighting. I understand there is a desire to possibly install a new historic style acorn light like you have around the town hall building, and we will happily incorporate that at the front. However, I don't believe it's dark sky compliant, so we will work with you on whatever you want to see there. I'm happy to include that if needed. Next slide, please. So a few tree removal plans. This is sort of the right-hand side of the property, the front half. This is existing conditions plan with the trees noted with X's on them where they need to be removed. And it's kind of harder to tell where there are trees being proposed to be protected, and we're showing tree protection fence around each of them during construction to ensure that their root systems aren't impacted too much. Next slide, please. Here we have a few photos of some of the trees in that front half of the property that we're proposing to remove, especially towards right behind the existing library. There's a group along the edge of the existing driveway. There's some large white pine trees. Next slide, please. This is the back half of the property showing the tree removal plan for that rear half around the existing parking lot. And on the next slide, some additional photos of some trees that will be removed as a result of the expanded parking area, and some grading around the edges of the proposed parking area. Next slide, please. Of the 52 existing trees that are on site right now, 36 are proposed to be removed. But as you'll see here on our plan, we're proposing to plant 66 new trees to help mitigate those removals. There's going to be 30 new deciduous trees planted and 36 new evergreen trees. Our planting plan is 99, if not, if you want to be generous, 100% native species. And it's also designed to support pollinator species as well as biodiversity. The design of the planting also reinforces the curvilinear shapes that you can see in some of the curved aspects of the planting design there. And also because we're removing a lot of the lawn areas, we're reducing the amount of fertilizer-heavy use for a healthier environment. Now over to Jonas for civil engineering. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katya. I'm Jonas Procton with Horsley Wade Group. I'll speak to the stormwater management and also the civil engineering design.
I just remind you that these don't amplify, so if you could speak
Oh,
up for the people.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you. I did not realize. Like it has been said, we're just a stone's throw away over at 50 Main Street. The library faces Main Street to the front. You have this existing parking area to the back, an entrance drive on the eastern face of the building. There's an existing wetland to the northeast side, and then the church on the west side of the property. The property contains roughly 0.85 acres of impervious area right now. The parking area is just outside of the 50-foot buffer from the wetland, but it is currently within the 75 and the 100-foot buffer areas. Next slide, please. And this slide just looks a little closer at the existing stormwater at the site. So there are 2 catch basins currently at the site, and those capture runoff from the parking lot and also some roof drainage and direct the stormwater runoff directly into the wetland area through a pipe. And you can see a little bit better those buffers in the red, blue, and green dashed lines on the left side of the page. Next slide, please. Under proposed conditions, as Leah spoke to, the library itself will be expanded, and then the parking lot will be expanded a bit in order to improve circulation and maximize the amount of parking spaces. The result of that is a slight increase in impervious area, 1.2 acres of impervious area from the 0.85 before. We are still proposing the parking area outside of the 50-foot buffer and a slight increase in the area, the 75 and 100-foot buffer, and that is partially just necessary to achieve the circulation and the parking goals. Katya also spoke to the sort of children's area on the west side of the building that's being proposed, the nice patio area, and then the curvilinear plaza directly to the north of the building. And that all will be ADA compliant to allow access from some new proposed ADA parking spaces all the way to the main entrance of the building. Next slide, please. And this is more of a actual plan view of it, but you can see some of those ADA parking spaces. We're also proposing electric vehicle parking spaces, or at least electrical vehicle ready spaces. So it would be easy to install and expand on those spaces as the need arises. And then I'll also note that the plans have been revised slightly since the submitted package. So if you could go to the next slide. I want to point out that the building footprint has been reduced slightly in our most up-to-date plans. So the building width has been reduced by 18 inches. And it was noted that the previous building footprint was within 15 feet of the property line, and so this reduction achieves the 15-foot setback that is required per zoning. And then I'll also note that 1 parking space was removed from the submitted design in order to achieve necessary circulation for the fire truck. And if you go to the next slide, please. This is just pointing out the zoning table. So this has been revised since the submitted package, but there's an overall reduction in 1 parking space, but there is an increase in the amount of handicap parking spaces relative to existing conditions, as well as the electrical vehicle parking that I spoke to. Next slide, please. Speaking a little bit more to the stormwater management without going too into the weeds, we're proposing an expanded stormwater design that incorporates green stormwater infrastructure in order to manage stormwater runoff. So rather than directly discharging the stormwater to the wetland, the proposed system will capture and infiltrate where possible. So Katya right now is pointing to this bioretention area on the east side of the building that will capture runoff from the driveway entrance, and then runoff from the rooftop and the majority of the parking area will be directed towards a chamber system, a subsurface chamber system, and that will infiltrate water. The overall system is designed to capture and contain runoff from the 1-inch storm or slightly larger without discharging to the wetland. Next slide, please. And the overall impact of that is only positive, a reduction in peak runoff rates during all the storm events that we typically analyze, as well as increased groundwater infiltration and improved stormwater quality by treating that runoff. And that is all we have.
Great, thank you. All right. Should I go to the audience first to see if there are any questions that they want to raise at this point? Concerns? All right, I'll then go to the board. Start with Bob.
So the easy one I have is relative to the dumpster pad. I know the fire truck is our primary safety concern, but I'm expecting trash removal to be something that occurs multiple times a week potentially. And I'm just wondering if the design includes for the dumpster to be angled. We've done that in other tight locations with circulation that's tight. And just wondering if that could be considered, or should be considered, if you've looked at the size of the typical refuse truck and how they're gonna come in. And today, most of them are front-end loaders.
We've been considering it. We received the planning board comments this week, and so we've been considering shifting the dumpster over to that more angled side of that same area to potentially help with front-end loader access, and we will be looking closer at how a garbage truck could get in there.
So my tough question is the tree covenant that was signed in '87 between, I believe, the adjacent property at 54 and the town of Westford. And my first request is I would like to at minimum see a plan that clearly denotes which of the trees that are existing are covered under that covenant, because I want to understand which trees might be slated for removal that are supposed to be protected by that covenant. And was that covenant something you're aware of?
So,
If you could get to the microphone, just so it'd be captured.
yes, so, this was part of the deed from about 32,000 plus square feet that was purchased in '85 prior to the library design being approved by the town in that particular design. And you can see that the distance of trees and the number of trees was actually reduced. And actually on file with the town clerk, this is now dated, Bob, but the owners of the property at that time approved having a single line of white pines. Now, those white pines, I think there were some photos of them being consumed by invasive plants. There are some dead white pines, and there are some diseased white pines. So really, any screening that we put up now is going to be an improvement on what we have now, because we have steadily lost trees on that back lot. And it's about the back quarter of the eastern side of the parking lot.
Yeah, I still would like to see if I, on the plan, understand what this is referencing and make it easier for us to talk. And I suspect we have some people in the room tonight that might be asking about this. So just would like, yeah, they're here.
I
So-
would have a copy of the agreement that was filed with the town clerk.
We've read the agreement, but again, it's easier to see it on a
Well,
graphic, if we
Okay.
could mark a
Okay,
graphic up.
absolutely, we'll provide that.
Right.
And then it might deserve a site walk for us to see that. I suspect you're right possibly about many of the trees being diseased, and that in the long term, this will be an improvement, but still need to be.
Right, I'm sure you can make it better,
Concerned with
and
this.
I hope you
Yeah.
will, and just want to make sure that that's satisfactory to
Been very
the
challenged to
abutters.
keep that tree line alive, so.
My last questions have to do with some of the added appointments, the seating, the bike racks. I know you've already talked about maybe changing out the lighting for the Acorn light. It all has to go with the fact that the center is a historic district, and I guess I'm gonna ask our town planning staff to seek input from the Historical Commission and any other bodies that might want to do that. I guess what caught my eye was on page 80 of our packet. It shows that side courtyard. I think that was a photo from another project, and that was, in my mind, way too contemporary for that area that is between the library and the 1750 circa church. I did appreciate when I heard you talking, when the presenter talked about preserving granite. I would really strongly urge the use of granite and not curvilinear, but much more traditional straight lines like we see elsewhere in the center, kind of maintaining that look. We kind of have a look and feel also for the park benches that are there with the black painted iron. And I'm looking at these photos with chrome and stainless. I'm not opposed to that in some areas of town, but I'm not sure that's gonna fit in the center.
We actually have memorial benches that match the ones on the common. So we would retain those. They're plated and plaqued in memory of people. And I agree, the bollard is very modern, that light, so we're not tied into that. But definitely, we want especially the front to be harmonious. And, you know, these were just photo options. We
Yeah,
were
and-
only bike rack.
And unfortunately, the photo shows a large glass wall, which I don't think we're gonna have. We're gonna have a different style, so I don't think it really created the feel for that courtyard that we would like to see. But again, I would like to seek input from the Historical Commission.
So we are absolutely happy to seek input from others. We do just want to be, mindful, if we are making requests of the applicant, that it's consistent with the criteria that you have for site plan review.
I think it's within look and feel, and I'm just, we've had other projects in that area in the past that were pretty controversial. I don't think that's the case here, but we'd just like to make sure we get the tweaks.
We can make it tasteful. We're the only bike rack in Westford Center. And, we're an improvement over the Hortz barn that used to be behind the 1794 church. So we do want,
Yeah.
but we can make it, the idea was that the children's area would have an at-grade way to go outdoors and read or have story times or programs outside. So we can make it more harmonious.
Yeah. That's all I have for now, Mike.
Great, thanks, Bob. Joni?
The only concern I had was the first one that Bob mentioned about the trees that are, at the abutter with the concern. that-
Under the covenant.
Yeah, under the covenant, that we want to be sure, we're taking care of. I'm sure it will be an improvement, but still, that was the only concern, that abutter is okay with this.
We might have to consider amending the covenant in this case, if we're gonna make an improvement.
I would agree with
we
that.
Might wanna document that, so.
Right.
So everybody's,
Snow storage. Can you show us where on the plan you can, in the event of a winter storm, pile up a reasonable amount of snow? And will it require snow to be actually removed from site if we were in a band of several bad storms? Would snow actually have to be, taken off of the site in order to provide enough snow storage, or do you have it on
That's
site?
a good question. We need to give it a little more consideration. I think we'd look to the landscaped areas. We would not look towards the rear of the site because we don't want to shove the snow towards the wetland.
Right. Yeah, you have that tricky spot in the back with the wetland there. You really can't pile it there. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think we need to give it a little more consideration, but we'd happily show a plan, saying where we would like to put it.
Great, would appreciate that, thanks. That's all I have.
All right, Darren?
To add on to Dylan's, just if that's snow removal, keeping in mind, salt usage as well, because of the wetland right there.
Absolutely.
But otherwise, I'm looking forward to engineering's comments.
Great, yeah, I don't know everything, everything's been answered on my end. Again, I'll go back to the audience if anybody has any questions, comments. Yes, sir, you can bump to the microphone if you have something.
Should I come up?
Right up to the microphone. Your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Andrew Remick, 54 Main Street, the neighbor with the covenant. I appreciate that being taken seriously. This is separate to that. Sounds like that's being covered. Right between us and the front driveway, the white pines that your plan has removing. I don't know. I don't know if I have any covenant stuff to regard to this, but I think it doesn't show as well on a 2D plan, taking out one tree, putting in another. But as the one next to those are very big, tall, beautiful trees. If there's anything that could be done to preserve those and maybe at least keep some of them, I think it's a great part of Westford Center. I mean, we certainly enjoy having those there in the area. I would appreciate any maintaining of those trees that could be possible.
Right, and I think we'll take a closer look at all of that area, but that's great.
But yeah, I don't think those are covered in the covenant, but yeah, great trees. Good tree.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Morissette, everything you want to add before we,
Nothing, the board already touched upon the comment about the trees. There's a specific covenant that calls out specific species. In today's day and age, that may not be
No, exactly.
ideal,
That needs
but
to
as
be
long
updated.
as the parties bound by the covenant agree to any changes, I think we'll be fine. It's just making sure all the parties are satisfied.
all right, November 4th, is that reasonable time to get back on this for technical comments?
I'm sorry, Janet Bernardo with the Horsley Witten Group. I'm just curious, if for November 4th, when do you need revised plans by? If we come back November 4th? Do you need them like a long time ahead or a week ahead or?
Obviously, the sooner the better. A week would be ideal.
Okay, a week would be ideal. Fair?
Would that work for you?
Yes, thank you.
All right, then can we have a motion to continue this till the 4th
Before
of
you go, I
November?
have one question.
Oh, sure.
Do we want to consider any kind of a site visit out there? Do we need to do?
We want to wait to look at their plans first and then,
We can,
We'll have
it's
the
just
benefit
that
in our hands.
the weather is better now. It gets worse and worse as we get closer to the middle of November.
my thought would be wait till we have their plans and then we
Okay.
can go out and take a look and
Okay,
compare.
that's fine.
So we could, depending on when we receive the plans, the site visit isn't part of the public hearing. You could always conduct the site visit if we have enough time when we receive the plans to conduct it before the November 4th meeting.
That'd be great. Yeah, let us know when you have them and we'll try and put it together.
Yeah.
So just for the public's benefit, the site visit, they don't continue these discussions, they only view things, they get some additional information that they can, benefit from being on site to see. They don't make any decisions during the site visit. All the decisions are made here at the public hearing, okay?
All right, then. Great.
Thank you.
Motion continue to November 4th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Give folks a second to clear.
Good night. Wow.
All right, moving on to our second public hearing item, PB 2415, 7 Carl Thompson Road for a site plan review and stormwater management permit. Welcome, Attorney Robbins.
Thank you. Keeps coming. Sorry, they're down there. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Attorney Melissa Robbins from the law firm of Farrell and Robbins. Also with me tonight is Matthew Waterman from Land Tech Consultants.
They're coming.
Yep, and the project applicant is here as well, Walter Erickson and Jim Paterno. It's been some time since we've been here. So what have we done since we've been here? We did have a site visit in July. A couple of the board members had come out and looked at some of the issues, especially the issues that the abutters had with some of the construction that was proposed. Okay, I'm gonna let Matt go through that in a second. We did actually meet with the largest abutter to the project and have put in a berm area. We've also put a berm area to the rear, some additional landscaping, some fencing. We've agreed to do some maintenance out there. So I think we're going in the right directions with the butters, and I won't say that they're happy. If they're here tonight, they can speak for themselves, but I think we've done everything in our power to make sure that they have a visual buffer to the structure. We've revised all of the plans. We've worked with your engineering department. As you see in your packet, we have a revised engineering letter, and I can run through that quickly, but there's a couple open comments there, but there's nothing major. I think actually for engineering comments is a question about cover, which we will address. There is a couple open comments about traffic. We have responded to the third-party consultant for traffic now. I did not bring my traffic consultant with me this evening because your traffic consultant hasn't had an opportunity to review his comments. But I think we've addressed everything there. So you'll see in the engineering letter that that is also open. In the engineering comments, you can see that there's an open easement issue right now around the rear of the property. I'm calling that the rear. There's a 10-foot easement that's supposed to have the water line easement to the town of Westford in there. It actually doesn't exist. The easement was never put in place. The water line is there, so the town doesn't have any rights to that area. My clients and the landowners are good people, and they've agreed to give
generous.
that easement to the town of Westford as part of this project, so we will actually be alleviating that concern. There's also some concerns as to the abutter, as to some existing structures that are out there and some additional access that the abutters are out there. We're also going to agree to give the abutters all necessary easements over the property to the extent that we show them on the plan so that they can keep that current infrastructure and access out there today. So we'll alleviate all of those concerns. The board and the abutters had some questions about the architecture. Can we break it up? Can we use some color and design to break it up a little bit? I think the board can see in their packet that we've actually done that. Joe's going through so you can see it. Yes, there we go. So we've used some coloration here to try to break up some of that scaling. And just please recall those second floor windows, that's not second floor, those are architectural only, just to try to break up some of that design a little bit so that you're just not looking at a giant white wall all the way around the building. I think you can see that goes a long way in breaking up the scale and the overall massing, especially towards the abutter side of the property. We did receive water department comments as well in September. I think Paul and Jeremy actually wrapped a couple of those comments into their review letter as well, but we have no objections whatsoever to all water commission comments. We can meet all of those standards. And every single condition that Paul and Jeremy have put in their engineering review letter, we can 100% comply with all of those. And we can make revisions, because we'll have a little time here before traffic is done, so we can even make those revisions that they've requested for the final plan set, so you don't have to condition those minor plan revisions. We'll make those prior to the next meeting. I don't need to go through the whole plan set. I think engineering was pretty satisfied with them, but what I would like to do is just let Matt quickly go through just some of the features we put in for the abutters, because I know that was important to the board, so just quickly to just go through those couple of things.
Yeah, no, and some of these were either items that we talked about at the last meeting back in June, or and/or have expanded on. There's kind of two direct abutters to the Forest Road side, which on this case is plan left. You can see a dark line of evergreens. And there we talked about it last time, where we do the green bank of the parking along that westerly side of the, or the southwesterly side of the parking, to provide as much offset to those abutters to the southwest. There's the natural buffer that is associated with that, you know, anywhere from 30 feet to up to 100 feet when you get closer to the wetlands. And then the evergreens along that area that is most affected by headlights coming around the building and circulating kind of in a counterclockwise fashion. The second one, which I'm Melissa alluded to is the abutter, which is off of Betty Lane, which is down to the southeast, or down in the bottom right-hand corner of our plan. There was some questions about, there was an existing berm, which was not necessarily a berm, but there was just kind of some excavation material when they were installing the water line, is our best guess. And the location of the new berm in relation to that berm, just from a perspective standpoint. It is almost in the exact same spot. It's rotated slightly. It's not a well-defined berm, where our berm is 20 feet wide, 4 feet tall, and then it has the plantings along it. We did extend the plantings further. As Melissa said, there's some fencing that encroaches into that bottom little corner. That fence will be maintained as a buffer to the property at number 6 Betty Lane. And then maintaining the access onto Carl Thompson Road. There's a gravel driveway they use kind of as a secondary access to the back of their property, and putting a berm along Carl Thompson Road just to keep water that flows along Carl Thompson Road in the drainage system in Carl Thompson Road.
Just quickly, just to Matt's point about the berms that we're putting in for the abutters, I think you saw a notation in Mr. Sterrett's letter. It was one of the ones that said not addressed, that we have a 2-to-1 slope issue on one portion of the site. That's the issue. Those berms are actually 2-to-1 and not 3-to-1. So you'll see at the next plan revision, we'll actually add a waiver that'll be specific to these berms only, to allow for a 2-to-1 slope, but it's only for these landscape berms, nowhere else on site. So that's left as an open issue on his letter, but we'll address that prior to the next meeting. Sorry, Matt.
Nope, that's all I have, actually, so it was perfect timing.
So I think that has gone through. I know it's been some time, but I think we've addressed a lot of issues during that time. We were hoping to have traffic cleaned up for this evening, but unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to get it in before last week. So we will have that still outstanding for the next meeting, but we're happy to answer any questions the board may have as to the update since the last meeting.
Great. Yep. Start with Bob again. Bob?
Yeah, I'm fine with the traffic. I don't have any concerns there. My concern really has to do with the massing of the building that's so close to the residential spaces. And I've said, there's nothing really we can do here with the existing zoning, but I think we need to address this issue in industrial A and B when it abuts residential. I just think this is way too close. And my question is there any possibility of bringing the height of that building down? Because when I looked at it in this drawing, I thought it was 2 stories. I realized looking at the back, it is the garage doors. But it just brings to question what's going on in this building, because we've had, I think, 2 other contractor yard projects, and the buildings were not this high.
Right. This is 100% not a contractor yard building. You know, the contractor yard would be an additional variance that would need from the zoning board of appeals at this point with the current status of Westford zoning. So that is not what we're proposing in these structures whatsoever.
And so what would be the use in these structures?
We don't have any specific proposed uses in the structure, but they're all going to be as of right. So we're proposing nothing except what's allowed in the industrial A zoning district.
Okay.
It's part of the reason why we go through the major commercial project special permit, is to allow for multiple principal uses in the structure. It's actually the only zoning tool in the town of Westford that allows for that. But it doesn't allow for you to do non-conforming uses. So every single use in here would be allowed. Even if we wanted to put in a motor vehicle repair shop,
Right.
we would have to come back to this board for a special permit. So there'll be no hidden uses or no special uses in here that except what is allowed in the industrial A zoning district.
Understand that.
Yeah.
It's just in the other cases, when we knew what the use specific was.
Right.
We dealt with negotiation in terms of noise and hours of operation.
Sure.
On that, and that's our concern. Not knowing what's going in here makes it hard to kind of negotiate that and alleviate that for the neighbors, because this is so close to the property boundary.
And that's why we've spent so much time trying to address the neighbor concerns. and tried to, especially the closest neighbor, with keeping the berm, with allowing the fence to be onto our property, with actually increasing the length of the berm, the height of the berm, the number of trees, and also reducing the parking out here, which is one of our significant waivers, allows us to keep a buffer to our closest residential abutters. And then in all of those areas where we're close, we're putting that berm to protect the uses from each other.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, I think it's the large garage doors where I think the majority of sound will emanate from is on the back of the building, next to Betty Lane there. I didn't know if there's any way of juggling around in terms of whether you could have access to the space from that side on one end of the building and have the doors on the other side of the building.
So flipping them on the sides that are closest to the abutters. Flipping
Well,
the doors
yeah, we've got
closest.
them right in the backyard of one house, it appears, so I didn't know if we could do some kind of analysis here in terms of how we adjust, how sound emanates from that building.
Sure, and I think, and I have to go back and look at my notes, but I do think too, we had already talked about hours of business because it was something that was important to the planning board during the first hearing. So we can look at both of those and also address the hours of business that we've proposed as part of this
And
project.
I think that'll be helpful. I think we did
Yeah.
talk about that originally, so if we get
Yes.
that nailed down, that would
Yes.
definitely be
I mean,
helpful.
give you an example, when we looked at this for another site, we were concerned, in one of the sites, one of the potential thing was a plumber's contractor yard.
Sure.
And what we were afraid of was them cutting iron pipe at 7 or 6:30 in the morning.
Right.
Because that tends to be a very noisy operation, if you ever heard it.
Right.
So we were just looking at what kind of uses there were, so we understood
Yeah.
what level of sound emanation was potentially possible.
Well, the good news for you is that tradesmen's businesses are not allowed in an IA zoning district. So we can't have that use even if we want to. The building commissioner has made a determination that we can have offices related to the business, but none of the underlying uses. So in your example, this is another example where we'd have to go back to the zoning board in order to get a use variance in order to allow for that type of use. And I think it actually goes to your point, that some of these uses that you're thinking of are harmful to residential abutters. So when you're looking at this IA zoning district, I think that's why they prohibited them in the IA zoning district. Even though it's called industrial, they were cognizant that they're close to residential neighborhoods. So you're either coming back for a special permit or the uses aren't allowed at all.
The unfortunate thing we didn't consider in the IA district when we did this was looking at how much buffer, vegetated buffer had to be preserved.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
we now have a situation where this is perfectly legal, but we have
Right.
parking up pretty close to the property border.
Right.
Property boundary, so.
Yeah, and we have this particular park, this industrial area, a lot of the residential abutters came in after this was approved. It's just that this is the last lot that really hasn't been developed, so that's to your point.
Right.
But I agree with your points, and we'll look at them, and for the next meeting, we'll come back and make sure we look at if we can make some flips there, if we can, on the end units closer to the abutters, and also really closely look at our hours of business,
think
especially
they
to the
know.
rear, going into those garage doors.
And we'd also like to understand if there's anything we can do with garage doors that would increase the soundproofing on them.
Yeah, here, you go ahead. Hold on.
Hi, Walter Erickson.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go over a couple of points. So we design these buildings as flex buildings, and it's very difficult for us to go out and secure tenants prior to knowing when we're gonna have our approvals, and of course, the lead time for construction. So, we're a year and a half away before we can put anybody in a building like this. So we try to design them so that they'll be flexible. We have multiple other buildings ourselves that are just like this. And although we show those garage door bays in the back of the buildings, there are many cases where the tenants that we have don't even use them. We have one of our previous tenants that looked at this space, and they make labels, small labels, very small company. They make labels for automobile manufacturers for every single part that goes on an automobile car. And they rented 8,000 square feet off of us before, and they're a great tenant, only have about 10 or 15 people. They would only use a garage door maybe once a week to get supplies in. All the traffic and everything would be in the front of the building. So if we can work out a deal with them, if we can negotiate with somebody like him, I think you'd find that those garage door bays are gonna be less intrusive for all the neighbors and the abutters.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's everything.
Anything else, Bob?
Nope.
Joni?
My only concern was, again, going back to the hours of operation and whatever we come up with on that, so whatever the final resolution is. Yes.
Dylan?
I share Bob's concerns with the massing and scaling. I'm really, when I look at this plan, it looks like a plan that was, designed to maximize the buildable envelope. So Attorney Robbins, have you and Mr. Waterman or your client considered reducing the number of units from 13 down to something like 11 or 10?
No, really, we looked at the size that was necessary to make this economically possible. As this board may know, we've had other tenants look at this site, try to come in for various uses and has not been successful. But I did not bring the slide for this evening, but we also did look at the other sizes of the other commercial industrial properties along Carl Thompson. And this is what I think in ratio to the others is actually smaller than some of those other buildings along that way. So we can bring that for the next meeting as well. When we're looking at scale along that roadway, this actually fits in quite nicely. The unique thing about this property is we're the only one that touches these residential properties, and we're trying to be sensitive to that while keeping a size that's economical.
So I guess that's, if you're gonna bring the other information about the other developments on Carl Thompson, then you ought to include the setback to the abutting residences, because without that, it's really not something you can assess the massing and scaling without understanding proximity to neighbors, right?
Those aren't as close to neighbors, especially the ones out towards Groton Road.
Yep.
That's what's unique about this piece, is that it's the hanging tail of Carl Thompson.
I know, I've been down it.
Okay, yeah, so we're just trying to be part of the reason in this layout design and not being a big block building, one big block building, is trying to take that into consideration.
The reason I mention it is, to my view, not an expert like Mr. Waterman, if you take 3 units off this, one at the kind of the northern end and then 2 from the other end, I think you don't need the berm anymore. You can probably eliminate most of the banked, green space but available for parking, and fit a building much better into that area just by eliminating 3 spaces. Now, I don't know about the economics of this, if that throws the entire project off and makes it something that's not worth building. But when I was looking at it, I was like, if you downsize this on both ends a little bit, you eliminate at least 2 or 3 obvious problems with what I see in this development.
Just because I'm directionally challenged here, just help me out. So for the two on towards...
Down by where you have the curved berm.
Okay,
I would
so
eliminate
2 at that end and
2
then
units there
1.
and 1 unit at the top.
Okay.
And I think, you could get rid of probably at least, half of the banked parking, half of the green space parking, and not even have to ask for that as a variance from us.
Right.
That's just to my view, so.
Right.
But otherwise, I don't have any other comments. I'll pass it along.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
No, I appreciate you guys working with the abutters. I think there was a lot of comments and concerns there, so I appreciate the steps taken so far, so I think that's great. And I'm curious to hear the traffic feedback.
Yes.
And the final sign off by engineering, but, I think the improvements made so far, I think are in good faith. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have anything. Let's go to the audience. Anybody in the audience have any questions, concerns?
Alan McCash from Holzberg, 6 Betty Lane. I am that abutter, yes. So yes, we've spoken with Mr. Erickson, and we are on board for the most part with everything that he's offered up. The driveway, the extra berming for water displacement, and I guess the one thing that we would kind of want to ensure is that the arborvitae, if that's how you pronounce it, again, don't ask me, just kind of be kept in perpetuity, not put up, die in a year, and be left, dead. So just kind of have it there, because we would kind of like to protect our, the usage of our property. I kind of like Mr. O'Connor's idea of shrinking the footprint a little bit, but we would still need that to help, soundproof, engine noise, idling, and again, those garage doors if they do truly get used.
So. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick Shields, 51 Forest Road. I come back, we don't have, I think, as many other neighbors as we had at the first meeting, but I echo the board's concern about how imposing this large building will be on all the neighbors. And I'm all for having something there. I just think it's too big of a scale compared to all the other industrial things that are abutting the residential. The fact that all the other buildings have much bigger setbacks and aren't as big imposing buildings right in people's backyards. I want to just echo again my concerns about potential future water issues with the large amounts of water being pushed into the ground and raising groundwater levels. I'm not an expert. I don't know if that's a real concern, but it's a concern I have that will potentially happen in the future. And I just urge the board to take that in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Morissette, continue the 4th. Does that work for you folks for traffic and possible revisions and?
Well, there is a chance, depending how town meeting goes on the 21st, the 28th would be the continuation of town meeting. If it doesn't wrap up in that one night.
So we could, with potential of having to continue again.
That's fine. If we could continue to the 28th and then go to the 4th, if we would just grant the continuance if the board meeting was canceled, only because I have a conflict on the 4th. The only other thing I would ask is I know we have some legwork to do, but we also will have significant conditions out here. So if the board doesn't mind, if we start working on some conditions, knowing that we'll have traffic and other conditions that the board's going to set on for the next meeting, whether it be the 28th or the 4th.
I was going to suggest starting a draft decision, but if there are going to be significant changes, if you're so inclined to take some of the board's recommendations of,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But I
Yeah.
certainly can start
Yes.
beginning, you know.
Yes, absolutely. Some of the technical comments will not change general comments of engineering, whatever traffic comes back with. So we can start that, but I agree with you that something could change before the next meeting that would change some of the conditions. That
Yeah,
this
but
board
I
may
certainly
put
think
on
we could start on it.
there. Yeah.
And my one question would be to town staff, if there's enough time for town engineering to do the review on the traffic documents that have to be submitted.
Well, that'll be the
It
consultant.
has been submitted.
They have been
But
submitted.
that's actually going back out, that got pushed out to third-party review.
Okay.
Yeah, so that wasn't kept in-house. And if the third-party consultant would need more time, we would obviously grant them more time.
So that's already started then.
Yes, it has been sent to
Okay.
a third-party consultant. Yeah.
So the only minor wrinkle is that if, God forbid, town meeting goes the second night, you won't be here to continue it. We would have to sort of, to
We could
protect the
convene
public
a town
hearing,
meeting.
you would have to, I now need to ask, which presumably you would have been here for a meeting on the 28th. But I assume if town meeting gets continued to the 28th, would you folks be attending town meeting?
I may be traveling on the 28th, I have to check.
But we would have a
Oh,
quorum?
28th? No, I will not be here. I'm booked on the 28th, sorry. I will not be here. I would not be at town.
So we have to continue.
Okay, so that is two that would not be here.
Right. So,
Even-
Mr. Chair, so since we have a special permit, we need 4th, so that's fine. We'll
go
go
to
to
the
the
4th.
4th. Yes.
Okay.
Thank
Let's
you.
make it easy.
And then if you're not, you
Yes.
can continue at that time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Terrific.
But we still have the freedom, if time allows, to begin, if we can, on
Yes.
some draft conditions, because I think that would help flush out some of the concerns.
Yes.
Yep. Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Having said that, is there a motion to continue PB 2415 7 Carl Thompson to our meeting here at 7 o'clock on the 4th of November?
So moved.
Second.
Motion to second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on to PB 2422, amend zoning bylaw to extend the maximum use of a temporary trailer. Mr. Morissette?
So, Mr. Chair, this is a continuation based on your custom of keeping zoning bylaw amendments open for at least 2 meetings. I don't recall a huge number of comments for this. This is really just changing the number 6 to 12 in our zoning bylaw to be consistent with state law. It's for the use of temporary trailers in the event a single-family dwelling or 1 or 2 family dwelling suffers from some sort of catastrophe. It would allow someone to live on the site in a temporary trailer while their home is being rebuilt. So I don't know if there are thoughts or comments from the board or the audience.
I'll ask the audience, any thoughts or comments on this amending the zoning bylaw to the board?
The only comment I had was relative to, where is this here? I called up Joe earlier today, but on page 353 of the packet, we have a zoning map embedded in there. And it was the zoning map as of the March 25th, 2023 town meeting. I think we need to update that to be the latest zoning map, which just got approved with the MICMOD changes back in May of this year.
Yeah, we're happy to do that. At the time we did this, it wasn't
I know.
yet valid, so we'll do that.
Caught that and just realized that's what we should be showing people as the current zoning map. But other than that, I didn't have anything else.
Anybody else? All right, can I get a motion to recommend to town meeting?
Close the hearing.
Sorry?
Close the public hearing.
Oh.
I'm trying to get to the thing. Here's the number.
Pesky staff, always getting in the way.
It was
I
PB
mean,
2422, the public hearing.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, and so do we want to approve the report and recommendation and recommend a town meeting? The just requested changes to section 3.2.1 of the residential accessory of the zoning bylaw? Yes, Mr. Board.
Hi, maintenance staff here again, sir. We would ask if you approve this tonight, we'd like it subject to town council review, just in case they see anything unusual, and if there are any significant changes, we can certainly bring it back to the board again if necessary. But if possible, we would like you folks to vote on this tonight, because the select board is discussing this tomorrow night to potentially take positions on these articles.
Okay. So, we motion to approve the requested changes to section 3.2.1, the residential accessory use of the zoning bylaw, subject to town council's review.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
You?
All right. On to general business. 0 and 415 Groton Road. Ms. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this one is a relatively small project. There's 2 new single-family dwellings being proposed over here. It is subject to stormwater management permit for over an acre of disturbance. We have not received engineering comments as of yet. Plan here. So we'd have one proposed driveway off of Groton Road, a new dwelling over here. The other one is proposing access off of this edge of gravel pavement. Some refer to it as Loon Way. May have access to it through Lakeside Meadows, that development there. So that's what they're proposing on this plan. We haven't received engineering comments as of yet, so there's not a whole lot for the applicant to respond to at this point, but we do anticipate getting engineering comments over the next week or so.
All right. So I guess at this point we'll go to the board if any questions, or we just want to wait for engineering comments, but
Bob?
you have any initial?
Nothing, yeah, waiting for engineering.
No, nothing at this point.
No, nothing.
I'll wait for engineering.
All right.
Defer.
So will you continue this to the 4th?
Yeah.
All right, so motion to continue this to the November 4th meeting here at the town hall at 7 PM.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, was there anyone here for that agenda item tonight? No?
General business.
General business, right.
What's that?
It's general
All right,
business.
PB 05013, 134 Littleton Road. Board to review and approve architectural plans prior to the issuance of a building permit per condition 7A of the project decision.
So, decision that goes back quite a ways. Did come in front of the board recently just to extend the time frame on the approval. Now that it is planning to be under construction, new building over there. As we were going through the building permit, we did note this condition in the decision letter, so we wanted to bring the architectural plans for your review prior to any kind of issuance of that.
All right.
We do have, I believe, the property owner here, if you had any questions.
Okay, looks. I will go to the board. Any questions, comments, concerns, Bob?
No, the only thing that came to mind was I would have liked to be able to understand how this compared relative to what was approved in 2006, since I don't recall what was approved in 2006.
I'm a little miffed that we required a review of their architecture, but that's just my opinion. Joni?
No, I have nothing.
Ellen?
No, sir.
Darren?
No comments.
All right, so is there a motion to approve the architectural plans for 134 Littleton Road?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
C, council plan review preliminary discussion for potential project at 37 Powers Road under the MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District. Good evening, Attorney Robbins.
That's twice in one night, I apologize. Good evening, members of the board. Again, for the record, Attorney Melissa Robbins from Fairland Robbins. I'll let everybody else come in quickly. We're here tonight for a conceptual pre-application proposal for 37 Powers Road. I'm excited. This is my first one of these. As you know, we are coming in under the MBTA Communities Multi-Family Overlay District, which I will never call it that again. It will be the MICMOD for the rest of my presentation. That's a very long name. Congratulations to the town of Westford for being one of the first 33 communities to be approved. The greatest thing about it, I think, other than getting the approval done, is that means that the town of Westford also can go for these funds under the MBTA Community Catalyst Fund, which is something I will talk about at the end of the presentation, because I do think there's a great opportunity to go for it here. As this board may know, 37 Powers Road is currently used by Westford Earth Materials. You just go to that first slide. So most of you are familiar with this property as it exists today. This was one of the projects looked at as part of the overlay that got positive feedback, I think, from the communities at all levels. Generally was looked at as a good site for redevelopment and use for multifamily development. What's the next slide, Joe? I'm going to let, also with me tonight here is Jim Dunlop from Zom Living. I'm going to let him go through this next slide.
Should I sit or should I stand, or does it matter?
Whatever you feel more comfortable.
Hi, Jim Dunlop with Zom Living. I'll take a few minutes and talk about Zom and the project, and then turn it over to my architect, who is here, Brian O'Connor with Cube 3 Studio. And also with us is Chris Copeland, who is my partner, development partner on the project. So Zom Living is a private multifamily development company. Started back in the 1970s, so it's been around for a while, exclusively rental housing of all kinds, high-rise to garden-style, wood frame, heavy frame, and predominantly in the eastern half of the United States, East Coast, Northeast, Southeast, and also the Southwest, not West Coast. So we are under contract to purchase this site and in finishing our due diligence, and have done a fair amount of work on due diligence. And what we're going to show you is the result, is really the result of that, which is geotech, environmental, site plan, design, wetlands. We've started the wetland process, and where we've ended up is at 530 units, 4-story, surface parked, 1.5 spaces per unit. Everything really kind of by the book in your MBTA communities plan. We put in a slide, just the entitlement process that we have to go through. There's a fair amount of technical aspects to the site, the wetlands being the first one, and how that impacts the site plan, but also the on-site sewer plant and how that interacts with DEP approval first off, but also wetlands. And we also feel like we're in good shape with MIPA and you know, all its requirements, actually, but we have to go through the process on that. One issue that we have added recently is National Grid. We're trying to figure out the power source, they are trying to figure out the power source right now for us. It's not right at the site. So that's kind of where we are. I want to turn it over to Brian O'Connor to kind of do a progression of the site from what the use is today all the way through some wetlands and site plan.
Great, thanks. Good evening, Brian O'Connor from Cube 3. What I'm going to do is just kind of walk you fairly quickly through the site, share some conceptual plans with you, not get to a tremendous amount of detail, but just sort of give you a quick overview. So the total site area is a little over 36.5 acres, sorry, 35.5. It's 0.623 to be completely accurate. And as you can see, it's sitting on top of the existing site use. If we jump to the next slide, this is kind of the existing conditions. This is what's out there. They're not staged photographs. This is day-to-day activities. This is what's happening out there on the site currently. And so I think we feel really good about the transformation of this site into something that's a little bit more community friendly. If you can jump to the next slide. So what we're going to do now is what Jim mentioned, just a quick progression that really is our site analysis. How do we get to the developable area? How do we get to where we're actually going to propose this community? And so if we start at the sort of outer edges, you can see the light green areas are the actual wetlands, and they're jurisdictional and non-jurisdictional on here. And so, you know, there's obviously a lot of work to be done still on classifying the wetlands and sort of finishing that ANRAD review. But what we did is we established a 100-foot wetland buffer line, which is the dotted yellow line around the edges, and we stay out of that area. And if you jump to the next slide, you can see this is the sort of existing disturbed area that's on site. And this doesn't really line up perfectly with the buffer. So there's about almost 20 acres of disturbed area out there. And if we jump to the next slide, you'll see we actually used the 100-foot buffer lines to kind of pinch into that. And what it does is it yields the sort of real developable area of the site, which is 21.6 acres. That's the area that we believe is developable and is also existing disturbed area. So we have the benefit of sort of using what's already disturbed as our development area as a subset of the overall site. Within that, we sort of applied basic setbacks in conformance with the zoning, and we have about 18.2 acres that we're left with. That's the true buildable area. If we jump to the next slide, here's a quick overview of what we're proposing. Mr. Dunlop had mentioned that we're 530 or so units. What we're doing is we're proposing to develop those around the idea of a community here. We want to create a neighborhood that feels and smells and works like a neighborhood. We don't want a series of buildings that are just randomly placed in the field. So we took the 17.2 acres that we wanted to use and really thought about how do we create a center? How do we create something that binds these buildings together? And so we have this sort of really broad green area that runs east to west through the site from the front against Powers Road all the way over to the west. And we've organized sort of buildings and amenities for the residents in a way that really supports the activation of this space and creates effectively a little bit of a neighborhood square here. If you can jump to the next slide. Zooming in a little bit further, I'll walk everyone through this fairly quickly. Over on the right-hand side, we have Powers Road. We have two separated entries to the site that kind of run along the edge of the road, separated. And then as you come into the site, there's an amenity building right at the front that you see once you get past, if you guys are all familiar with the site, there's actually a fairly significant berm out there right now against Powers Road. So we really want to keep that berm. We want to use it. We like what it does for sort of parking and visibility into the site. In fact, we may end up proposing to enhance it in certain areas, but once you get past the berm into the site, there's sort of a primary amenity building where leasing functions happen and amenities for the residents. That amenity building has a pool behind it and a hardscape area, which really leads into this whole broad green area that connects these three primary buildings here. And then there's a very sort of well-developed path network that we're doing within the site that we hope eventually will lead to potential connections out across the site, depending on how the town looks at this. But the idea is that all of the buildings, all of the residents are intimately connected to this green space. So there are 5 buildings. All of them are 4 stories. There are 2 amenity buildings at the front of the site. Along the southern edge of the site, you'll see a small square where there's a pump house. We do recognize that we're going to have some wastewater issues to deal with here. The smaller sort of linear white buildings are actually exterior garages that'll be populated on the site to provide cover for some of the cars sort of equally dispersed. And then from a sort of operational standpoint, we're always thinking very early on, not only how do we build community, but how do we make sure that there's good fire department access, good emergency vehicle access through the site. So we've sort of started to think about how that would work, and we feel really good that there's sort of a plan to address all of that. If you jump to the next slide, very quickly, one of the thoughts here is that there may be the possibility of phasing this. We are designing it and thinking about it as a singular project, but there is the potential to sort of divide it into a 330 unit phase 1 and then a 200 unit phase 2. And then I think the last couple of slides here, we want to talk about something that I think is really important that the development team has been focused on, which is what is the quality and the character of this place? Not just saying we're creating a neighborhood, but actually thinking hard about how do we tie the outdoor public spaces to the indoor amenities? How do we connect to the buildings? How do we sort of develop a language here that really will feel like it holds itself together? And so, without going into a lot of detail, there's going to be a really rich palette of indoor and outdoor amenities that should work together and kind of tie the whole community together. If you jump to the next slide, I think the last thing we wanted to talk about is we Jim, or do you guys want to talk about it? I mean, just at the highest level, we think there's an opportunity for this plan to be part of the bigger picture, right?
Yes.
So.
Right. Yeah, we put some thought into how this sits and what are the different uses and property owners around, and where are the pathways in town, and how can we take this site plan and connect it? And it's not a simple answer, but these are ideas. Like Bell Westford is a place. It's in its own kind of mixed community that's on Littleton that has a connection. Maybe there's a possibility of us connecting to Bell. We'd love to connect to Neshoba, but there's several landowners in between us. So there's 3 kind of towards the Bell Westford side, and then there's Powers Road that we'd like to be able to connect up and down, and then possibility of another connection, but that's through more of an industrial property. So there's a bit of work involved in that, but we'd love to have a work session where we see what's around town, and Melissa has a lot of knowledge on where those are as well. So we've been talking through a lot of it.
Right, and really part of our focus in putting this first preliminary conceptual plan together was to show you something as of right. We're gonna follow all the rules. We're gonna build the affordable housing, we're gonna put the parking in the right location, we're going to try to show you all of the buildings that meet this form-based zoning. But now with this MBTA Catalyst Fund, and anybody that's been in the room with Jeff Morris since MBTA Communities has been passed to discuss the connectivity and pedestrian amenities and getting people out of their vehicles, onto their bikes, and actually being able to get them throughout a community is huge. And I think this Catalyst Fund actually gives the town and this applicant an opportunity to discover some of these question marks. Even if you're looking at Bell, it's not far-fetched. Bell has sidewalks everywhere throughout their entire development. You can easily make a connection through Bell, go out right into the Littleton Road, you're on a sidewalk. You're walking all the way down to Big Apple Deli on a sidewalk. You can get into Powers Road then, you can get into Sugar Maple, and you're all of a sudden on 10 miles of paths and trails through all the way to Liberty. And even if you look at the area along Powers Road, on top of MIPA, yeah, we gotta deal with DOT, but if you are actually going in and getting some of these funds for these communities, under this Catalyst Fund, can we put a sidewalk down Powers Road and be one of the first communities that goes in for this money? Yes, we could. We can apply for it. I won't go into this Catalyst Fund, and obviously we're talking a vacuum because it's never happened before. But the greatest thing about it is only the 33 communities that are compliant right now can apply. And the deadline's December. So it makes it a very slim margin, a very slim pool, and you'd have to be very creative quickly in order to get there. So when you're looking at this plan, I see some opportunities. Do we try to make some of these buildings a little taller where you're not gonna see them and go for a special permit so we can create a public amenity, maybe along the roadway, some more green space, some parking spaces to allow for this connectivity, and do one of these applications together with the town? This could be a good opportunity for that. But obviously that takes this board to tell us that we want to go in that direction, and, you know, maybe we start looking at some of these options to go down that path. So I'm pretty excited about that. Maybe that's an option for the town and this project to work cooperatively towards some of those funds. I think we jumped the gun a little bit on the NRAD. We've already applied for that. We're actually before the Westford Conservation Commission. I'm sorry, I think we forgot to tell you that at the beginning of the meeting. So we've actually already started that process. We've already met with Matt Salem. They've already been out there. We have another conservation meeting this week. So we're really trying to nail down those points so we can make sure that we're in the right area, and then setting our wastewater treatment area, and then we can really start looking at where are our great green spaces and setting the buildings around it. This is a unique site even for me, because we're not taking away green space to put in development. We're actually taking away an overdeveloped area to put in green space, which is not usually the place I'm before this board. So that's a great place to be in. I think this developer has really taken a lot of time and energy to put a quad together with a lot of green space interior to the structures, so each of the units can have really an open quad, open green space within each of these little tiny neighborhood phase areas. But I do think there's still a huge potential along Powers Road for a public amenity if the town wants to look at that. I think I've said enough about that. And this is our conceptual plan, and would love to hear the board's feedback on their initial thoughts.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for a great presentation. Bob?
So to that point, I would emphasize that Trailside right there is pretty close to the edge of this property.
Right.
And that has the ready access, and I think there's some parking down there for the Kennedy Pond Trail system, so. And I believe there's a sidewalk down one side of Trailside, so that would be a very easy connection to make and make this trail accessible.
Sure.
And many miles of trails. The first thing I wanted to say was under the entitlements path, I think the one you may have forgotten was Mass DOT. They tend to be a bit of an impediment at times.
Oh, yeah.
So I would add that
We're
to the.
aware, I guess maybe we put that there, or thought it was under, we thought we put it under MIPA or something,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, our traffic engineers.
Yeah, I would be adding Mass DOT.
We should put National Grid first, and then the DOT, yes, somewhere in there,
Yeah.
yes, but I agree.
Thanks.
It appears to me I don't see any obvious waivers on this project. We had an earlier one come in with all kinds of waivers, so I think that's good. One question I have is, given its current industrial operation, are there any known residual hazards on that site that have to be removed?
We've done the environmental phase one, and the only thing that came out of that was some lack of paperwork on the removal of 2 underground tanks. And so we're doing more to nail that down, but nothing else, so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty good site, actually.
So the big part of my discussion here goes back, because I was on the master plan committee in '98 when we worked with Mr. Nardone and Mr. Gutierrez on this parcel and what became Tech Park West. And I think you hit upon something that, for me, that's really special here, and that is the traffic flow, the trail flow, the sidewalks, the adjoining parcel. I would really encourage all of us to work to get these connected. I think right now, Tech Park West, where Bella Westford is located, and NetScout, they have ready access out onto Littleton Road and Concord Road. I think if you can marry that up with this parcel here, adding access to Powers Road, you would only need one access out on Powers Road. You wouldn't have to have the 2 you're planning for here. That could simplify Mass DOT. review as well. It would certainly enhance everything in terms of emergency access to the site, because it eliminates situations where you have a choke point at what we call Pete's Corner, Powers Road, and Concord Road. It would greatly enhance how traffic for both sites gets out onto either Powers Road to, let's say, go towards Littleton, or get out on Littleton Road to go towards the center or go towards the highway, or lastly, getting over onto Concord Road for a small amount of the traffic that's trying to get there or get over to the daycare centers. I think this could solve our issue of trail access for the daycare centers that are right there. There's certainly, I think there's some amenities over off of Robbins Road in terms of recreation. As you said, in the long term, access over towards Neshoba. You wouldn't eliminate it, but you would certainly facilitate it for the future. But I would highly encourage that. And then, if you can work partnerships with Bell of Westford, I know they do things during the better months of the year, the warmer months, with outside activities, food truck nights or food truck weekends. And that's the kind of thing that would benefit both of your developments, and you could similarly do the same kind of thing. I would certainly want to understand a little bit more about some mixed use. You talked about things that you're going to have for the residents, but things that could benefit Westford or the surrounding areas, you know, in terms of cafes or a restaurant or some other retail that might come in and benefit that area. But again, anything we can do to, I think, look at improving traffic, if we can leverage this site, which is probably one of the single largest sites in terms of car capacity in the town, it would certainly, I think, hopefully mitigate some of the concerns from the abutters, because everybody would benefit by having traffic that wasn't just being pushed onto Powers Road. If we could push it out at an existing light that already exists out on Littleton, I would think that would be a good thing. I might be wrong, but I think we could certainly see the improvement to the whole area. Not to mention the fact that it gets you over towards some of the retail establishments over there. So both foot traffic, bicycle, as well as automotive. So that's really, you know, and as I say, the site kind of helps sort out all this and get the vehicles out on the right road internally, as opposed to putting them on the roads and forcing them through those intersections which are already stressed. So
Great, good
that's
comments,
really
Bob.
everything I have.
Tony?
But good, I'm encouraged. Thank you.
So first of all, I'd like to say thank you. I'm really happy to see that, you know, some redevelopment of this site. As one of the folks who was part of the MCMAC committee in development of this bylaw amendment, several things, first I'm gonna do criticisms, and then I'm gonna do what I think are really great points, okay? First and foremost, some of the photos that you're showing, okay, one of the most important things in developing, that we talked about in developing this bylaw amendment, was keeping the character of Westford. So we're not looking for, you know, the, you know, apartments that we see on Route 2. We're not looking for the modern, downtown Boston apartments, not the things that we see in, you know, Brookline or Cambridge, but we're looking for things that maintain the character of Westford. So something just to keep in the back of your mind. To me, these photos depicted much more urban apartment living, and we were hoping to see some architecture incorporated that is more characteristic of the town. With that, obviously, we had a lot of general development standards listed, the block standards, things like the bicycle parking, and I reiterate what Bob said and what we've heard from, the town staff on trails, very important. What we want to do is get people to be able to walk, get people to be able to bike. Powers Road is a death trap. I mean, I go in and out of Empower with my grandkids, and I cannot tell you how scary it can be. So very, very important on traffic. You need to really pay attention to that. So the more walkability we can get, the better it is. Obviously, you know, the requirements for, you know, I see that you do have a lot of landscape areas and a community feel. That's great. Obviously, we put a lot of importance on landscaping and getting a lot of green space. Really glad to see that in the plan. Things like, you know, hard to tell from the concepts, you know, how the principal facades, you know, face, and the shared open space. Obviously, we'll see that much further along. You know, headlight screening, exterior materials, things like that. Glad to see you're going to maintain that berm and significant, hopefully, landscaping to, you know, to screen from the neighbors, because I'm sure we know the Powers Roads neighbors are very concerned about a huge, you know, development going in there. You know, open space, the intent to discern between, you know, public and private open space. Obviously, we want to, you know, encourage public open space and being able to just connect the town. I am also the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, and one of the things I would like to bring up is if you've given any thought to possibly increasing affordability, if you would be willing to work with the trust. Maybe the trust can work with the developer to buy down some units to do some things that can help you to develop maybe more affordable housing or some workforce housing. Big problem in Westford with workforce housing. You know, folks just cannot afford the rents here. So something we're kind of reaching out to you to say, would you be willing to do that? To look at senior housing, to look at, you know, workforce, more affordables, and we would want to work with you on that if we could. So, but very happy to see something good coming of, you know, what's been a very industrial use for a long time. So thank you.
Thanks for a great presentation. I'm really excited by it. I think there's a lot of potential here. I'm not concerned about the massing, the scaling, you know, the height of the buildings, any of that stuff. The one thing, and I guess I brought this up at the other preliminary conversation that we had, so like maybe it'll be a recurring theme, I'll bring it up all the time. The thing that struck me when I looked at the plan was the sheer size of the blacktop and the asphalt required to fit the 1.5 spaces per. And given the fact that we're gonna have, you know, 4 buildings of, you know, considerable height, you know, I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to think about parking garage like type of parking. I think it would cut down on the amount of asphalt, right? Allow us to keep even more green space. And I think you guys could position this as an amenity to the residents as well, especially if there's walking connectivity from the parking garage to some of the units. And I know just because my oldest recently moved into a place like this in Arizona, like people complain about the outside parking. There it's the heat, here it will be the snow or the rain or the bad weather or whatever. And I think if one of the spots to each unit was indoors and you could actually walk into your building like through some sort of a corridor or some sort of covered space, I think the residents would appreciate that, and it would let you put more green space back into those open areas that I do think have such potential with this property. So just a suggestion. I think it also lets you do things like solar paneling if you want to provide for some EV, electronic vehicle charging spots and things like that. You can build that infrastructure right into that parking garage. So just something to think about. And those are really my comments. I don't have anything else. I like to look at the plan. Thank you.
Great. Aaron?
No, great. Thanks for the presentation. I was on the committee as well. So part of our vision, I think, you can confirm this, was, you know, down here, including Bell and these other adjoining properties, would be eventually to have that all, the connectability there. So whether people are walking or biking, or even if there's a car, you know, road to, you know, drive through, that would be all huge, I think. I like the idea of the community feel, the green space, the kind of little neighborhoods. One thing we talked about was maybe having some mixed use in there. If you've got restaurant or deli or whatever, that people maybe at Bell could come over to use those amenities and vice versa or something like that. Kind of expand that community feel beyond just the property here, but even including some of the adjacent properties. But I think, yeah, I like the proposal.
Great. I echo pretty much everyone's comments. I think it's a great proposal. Looking forward to seeing that place redeveloped from a pit to a nice space. I hope we've given you some direction. Jeff, do you have anything else to add?
Sure, Joe and I do. I had sent a few minor comments to the applicants late today. Sorry for the timeliness. No skullduggery intended here. I was wondering if connectivity, I think, is covered sufficiently, so that's good. Because we feel that, with the potential for 530 units, this literally could be like the single or second largest. Neshoba has the potential for 600 units, but outside of Neshoba, this could be the largest development. And I think this would be perhaps the greatest missed opportunity if we don't weave connectivity into this. I think it would make it a much better place to live. And I think it could also enhance, the quality of living for some of the existing multifamily there and the multifamily that may yet come. So I'm very glad that the applicant is open to having those conversations. I also, to echo some of Joan's comments, I just wondered if maybe you folks would be willing to have a conversation with the Affordable Housing Trust Committee. I think that might be more productive to have a conversation with them to explore any options for some of those other
Absolutely.
housing types, because it might take some creativity. We understand that you don't get something for nothing, and I think they're willing to work with you on that. By the same token, I was wondering if you folks might be willing to meet with the Council on Aging and some of the Cameron Senior Center staff. They have expressed a lot of some concerns. They're hoping that maybe they can have a conversation with you folks as well about our aging population, some of the changing needs, some of the additional support services that they need. Just maybe if there's a little thought woven into maybe how you plan or lay your development out, it could go a long ways towards making things easier for our aging population. And of course, making sure that some of those trails and connectivity features are suitable for people of all ages. That would be great. I think you've already addressed a lot of our concerns. We basically want to know, these 530 units, how can these people get to, well, where are they going to get their coffee? Do they have to leave the site, right? But can they get to, how are they going to get to Littleton Road? How can they get to the trail by Sugar Maple? How can they get to Neshoba Valley Ski Area? I'm glad to hear that what can be done around Powers Road. And I understand a lot of these things involve third parties that we can't control or guarantee, but I think it would go a long ways to try to have those conversations if you can. And I'm glad to see that you're setting back some of the development further from Powers Road, the more intense. I'm glad to see that you're looking to maintain the berm or even enhance it. I think it would be a good thing, one, just selfishly for your own development, but also to protect those the neighborhood along Powers Road. And I think,
in terms of those cooperative agreements, Jeff, it's my understanding there's still developable parcels in Tech Park West. So this is a mutual benefit to both parties here, because for future traffic considerations for Tech Park West, they would benefit from having access to Powers Road, and this applicant would benefit from having access to Littleton Road. So I think they could mutually benefit one another.
yeah, and we did apply for a grant that we should hear about.
In the fall is what they say.
We're in fall.
Wide
so-
window, but fall.
So for connectivity and coming up with like a cohesive, larger plan of attack, to Attorney Robbins' point, there are new catalyst funds available. There is sort of a short-term deadline for sort of the expedited projects. It is a rolling application thereafter, but as she pointed out, we are one of only 33 communities, I believe, that are eligible for this funding at this time. And while I can't speak for the town, we would certainly be supportive of applying for and working with folks if we can get sort of that comprehensive plan, that fosters that connectivity, because it's more than just one site, one project, and we can think of, a lot of amazing opportunities here that we would not be able to extract out of one applicant, and we would not be able to require those off-site improvements, but maybe with some outside funding, there might be a lot more things possible. So, we're open to that. I mean, we have nothing else going on anyhow, right, Joe? So, I mean, but that's a priority. There's a short time window where there are a limited number of communities that can apply for those funds. So, we don't want to, we want to at least see if we should try to take advantage of that, is all.
While this is general business, and this is a conceptual plan, if anybody in the audience has any broad comments or questions, I'll certainly take those. Go ahead, Diane, come on up to the microphone. Remember, this is just a concept plan.
Diane Wood, 122 Depot. Just a simple question. How far is this property? I didn't get a chance to review the maps or the charts. How far is this project from Neshoba and the potential project that had been floated from Neshoba? I'm trying to get a visual
Yeah,
of
there's
the
several
number.
properties in between them, at least.
So it also depends if you're talking by car, walking, etc. We are very greedy and selfish here in planning department. We're trying to think of all kinds of ways to get there. We want to look at ways besides car to get there. And there may be ways going through some other properties to get there. There may be some existing easements through the end of Robbins Road that may connect to Neshoba Valley Ski Area. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I wasn't addressing an amenity of being able to go skiing. I was addressing a potential MBTA community project.
Yes.
Yes, the same.
So-
So
We're talking.
You know, having two very large efforts sat fairly close to each other, just the visual and how far away they are from each other, that's all.
So
It's 0.9 of a mile.
So the good thing is that while there's a potential of 600 units at Neshoba, it's set fairly far back. There's large land area, and the likely first phase of development would be nowhere near a public way, actually. So it'd be pretty far.
And one other question, Bell South. My recollection of number of units, 240?
240.
240. And there are 4 buildings, correct? At Bell South?
3, I
You're
thought.
talking about Bell Westford, right?
Yeah.
That's
Is it Bell South?
440.
Well, there were two Bell Westfords. So there was
One
the
down the
first
hill.
240, then there was the second. That's sort of off Robbins Road. They're collectively all Bell, so it adds up to 420 in total.
So the one down the hill, 240, 4 buildings, from what I recall, 60
I
units.
think it's 3.
Is that what it is? Okay, I thought it was, and I'm thinking 60 units per building, and in this scenario, there'd be over 100, correct? Okay.
In this conceptual.
Right,
you
for
know.
the current moment, correct.
It'd be 80 per.
80.
Here.
All right,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy Cook. I'm the chair of Council on Aging and the chair of Westford Housing Authority, and I just want to reiterate what Joni said. We're desperate for not just affordable housing, but workforce housing. Affordable is not affordable for a lot of the people that we deal with every day. And in full disclosure, I'm Melissa Robbins' mom, too, so. But thank
For
you.
record.
This is great.
Take judicial notice.
Could I add one, Nancy, I think one other comment. We are desperate not to dilute the total percentage as well, because we do not want to go back to the 40B era.
We do
And
not.
so
We do not.
we always are being aggressive to keep the numbers at the
Exactly.
percentage we have.
Exactly. Like truly affordable, though.
Correct, and which these are not.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, if I could just ask, just quickly back, and I will not say Catalyst Fund one more time, I promise, after this, but just thinking about that, we just have just a short time to think about it if we want to be aggressive in that front window. And I think in order to create a public amenity along the front, some of those buildings would have to go to a 5th story so that we could create some more green space up front, possibly put a public amenity up there. Is that something the board wants to look at? And if so, you know, we can take a look at that. The board can come out to the site. I mean, I encourage maybe a site visit out there. You can look at the grade, you can see where the neighbors are. We can look at some of the location of these proposed structures. So when we're talking about going to 5 stories, you can see exactly where we would be looking at it. If the board says this is not something we want to consider, then that's fine and we can move on. I just want to throw it out there now because we have an opportunity.
Well, I'm not speaking for the board, speaking for myself. I think if you make Joni and your mom happy, I think everybody would put a 5th story on it.
I think, that question was asked of me by town staff today to think about. And I'm fine with that, if we can do a couple things. One, go towards the 10% of the true affordable housing, okay? So that we don't dilute our numbers. Secondly, I think it was Dylan talked about the parking, and if we could do things that increase the apparent amount of green space by putting parking underground or hidden, yes, I think that really is a fair trade-off for the 5th story. And then lastly, really working diligently with the abutting property parcel to get the vehicular access. I think the trail access is not gonna be a big issue to negotiate, but vehicular access is tough, but I think that would greatly benefit this whole area if we can get good inter-site circulation of vehicles. So all of that would come together, and yeah, I would be very amenable to talking a 5th story if we can get all of that working. And lastly, just we do have to factor in some of the neighbors. I think you're doing that with the berm. I think we also could fit this in better if we cut down the number of accesses from Powers Road down to 1. That might soften it. And we get the benefit of having the access back out onto Littleton Road. You also could get walking connection to the daycare center. So for any parents who might have small children in those daycare centers living in this development, you've just eliminated potential vehicle trips many times by making it accessible, because it's not that far to get over to those 2 daycare centers now.
Right.
It's just a hazard.
Where are the
going
daycare
up.
centers?
They're off of.
They're on Concord Road and on Powers Road,
Yes.
almost up to Littleton Road.
Okay.
Gentlemen?
So, I think in our discussion, we talked about some flexibility with the height, as long as it meets the fire department criteria.
Yes.
And also, if there's a mixed use or, it's affordable or whatever, some component to make it worthwhile.
Great. Yeah, no, thank you very much. We like the input.
All right, thank you guys, appreciate the
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you very much.
So, one thing, do you want us to explore what it would take to apply to the
Yes,
state?
please. Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure. And this isn't a public hearing, but you probably will continue the conversation, and would you
Yes.
like us to try to line up a site visit?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great, moving along to review report recommendations for zoning bylaw to establish modified parking regulations for several uses, PB 2403. This is what we've reviewed and gone back and checked this language. Bob, do you have any comments on this?
No.
Joni?
No. Darren did step out.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we'll wait for him to, has he got any
Well,
comments? Yeah. You have any comments?
Take a break for a second?
Yeah, do you need to take a break for a second?
I'm just
Darren will be right back.
waiting for Darren.
We could sing a song if we want one.
Might hurt our
some
viewership,
card
or
tricks?
maybe the opposite. Just ask for the same needy thing about subject to council review, please.
Okay. We do shadow puppets?
I'm surprised. It's only 33 communities so far that have.
Is
Yes.
Newton one of those?
What's that?
Is Newton one of those?
I don't believe they are.
They have
It's either gonna-
conditional compliance.
It's gonna be a very busy, last couple of months of the year here.
You don't say.
For some other communities.
Well, for some, no, they're, well, some aren't.
I understand, I just was, yeah. Is there any place that's keeping a running tally of the status of this, that's publicly viewable?
Yeah.
Milton's is going before, is it today or?
Today, yeah.
Today they started?
Would they go to the courts today?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so, just so we're on the same page, Darren, we're reviewing, the zoning to establish, zoning amendment to establish the modified parking lot regulations for PB 2403.
Thank you.
You have any questions, concerns, comments on that?
No.
All right, so can I get a motion to recommend this to town meeting with the caveat it's going to be approved by town council?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I say aye as well. Modify report, review report and recommendation for PB 2417, amend zoning bylaw to define and, or regulate uses where they may be permitted. As we may recall, this was the brew pubs and the distillery. Any questions, comments on this, Bob?
No.
Joni?
No.
Dylan?
No.
Darren?
Nope.
And I have none.
I'll move that we recommend this PB 2417 for special town meeting, subject to town council review and approval.
Second.
Motion second, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Now let's review the town warrant for our recommendations.
Did you skip 2417?
Nope, we just.
That's the one we just did.
voted
That's,
on.
okay, that's the one I mentioned earlier, that we do want to include the latest zoning map in the report, so when it gets published, it's correctly referenced, but, okay.
Okay, I don't know that we have to support Article 1 since we're bringing it. Same with Article 2. Jeff, do we want to go to anything specific here, or just go through the line?
We should probably have a position established for Article 1 that we could report out.
You already did that
Did
as
we
part
already
of
have
your,
that taken?
when you concluded your public hearing, it's already on the website, your report and recommendation.
Okay, we did, okay.
I promise.
Just
We
make,
just did
it's been
2,
so
3.
long, because that one was a long time ago.
Yeah, we just did 2, 3, and 4 this evening, so it would just
Yep.
be if you have a,
Is there anything else that you want to take a position on?
well, and the street acceptance, I guess.
So,
Recommended,
I recommended that.
so, that's already half the warrant.
Cloverleaf?
Yeah.
Right.
Just scanning down.
If you don't have anything, that's fine. We just wanted to give you an opportunity to review and discuss.
Can we not recommend one?
I think we, didn't we vote on Cloverleaf Lane last meeting?
Well, we voted to have the selectmen
Yeah.
review. Select board. Yeah, I'm okay with, I would say Article 6 I'm all for, but does that need our legal notice, right? Doesn't have to be in the paper?
That's for, right, just general bylaw amendments, so.
No. But I don't think that.
I mean, this, okay.
Anybody have anything they want to specifically recommend, or, no?
No. Haven't looked through them, no.
All right.
All right, great. Let's move on to the minutes, review of draft minutes.
Town's gonna be a
Is there a motion to approve the minutes dated August 19th, 2024?
Moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Well done.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Only one set, isn't there? Oh, no.
Second.
Motion to approve the minutes dated September 16th, 2024.
So moved.
Discussion.
Nope.
Everything either. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, and I say aye. Okay, we have correspondence.
So just so you're aware, it was brought up this evening, we did get officially the word from Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities that our bylaw that was passed for MBTA communities is compliant. Full compliance, no conditional compliance or anything like that. So it does make us eligible for the catalyst funds.
Congratulations to the Land Use Department for a lot of hard work there.
Yeah, well done.
Mick Mac, everyone, it was.
Well done.
All right, terrific. So I get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.